Kia ora hoa. Welcome to today's video, and in today's video we are going to be making our very own spirit arrow, spirit arrow from the novel The Hatchet, or moreover Hatchet Winter, because the spirit arrow isn't actually mentioned until you get to Brian's Winter, which is the what if sequel to Gary Paulson's Hatchet. Well worth reading. But yeah, stick around and you'll see how to make it and get a bit of a background as to where the idea of the spirit arrow comes from. So, just to give you a bit of background first about what it is that I'm going to be making today. I've been reading to my class a classic novel called The Hatchet. And normally you get given the Hatchet, in New Zealand anyway, you get given the Hatchet as a book to read when you're a junior in high school. So about year 9, year 10, commonly year 10 you get to read the Hatchet. And I remember it from when I was at school, and I was looking for a novel this year to read to my students, and I'd read a couple last year, short stories and stuff, and they just weren't getting into it. And so I remembered I had a copy of the Hatchet at home, and so I thought I'd get that and read that to my students, and they absolutely ate it all up. They loved it. So I explained to them that there was a couple of different sequels. One of the sequels is he comes back, it's called Hatchet the Return, and another sequel is called Hatchet Winter, or Brian's Winter. And my students were so enthusiastic that one of them went out and bought a copy, and then another one went out and bought another copy of the sequel of the sequel. So they're really well and truly into the Hatchet. So at the moment we're reading Hatchet Winter, or Brian's Winter, and I really couldn't recommend it anymore. Like it's an amazing set of novels. Even I've never read Winter before. I've only read The Hatchet, and I'm well and truly into this. We've only read it for a week and we're already halfway through, because we're trying to speed read through it as many like little pieces of time that we have to be able to read it. We read it so that we can move on to the next one, because we've only got one more term together. Literally, we've only got like 6 weeks left together before they move off for Christmas holidays and start a new class next year. So we're trying to get through as much of the Hatchet as possible. But one of the parts inside the story is that there's an incident where he has like this kind of I wouldn't say religious moment, but like a spiritual moment as part of the survival story that takes place, and he ends up with something that he starts calling the spirit arrow, or it's like basically his magic arrow. And so what I thought I'd do in today's video is I'm going to make this spirit arrow and just have it displayed in my class as a bit of a nod to this year and our reading the Hatchet. So I'm going to take you through the steps that I'm going to do to make this spirit arrow. I'm not an archer, by the way. So let's get started. So based on the material, the reading material, I figured out that and it's pretty clear that the arrows that he's using in this part of the story are only used for hunting small animals, because later on, as the story develops, there's quite a lot of the novel devoted to him upgrading his weaponry, I suppose you'd say, so that he's able to protect himself and hunt bigger animals. So this spirit arrow is a small arrow used for hunting rabbits and things like that. So I've got the stick here that I got from my yard. I got some feathers, because there's in the story there he mentions that they're fire hardened pointed arrows. They don't have like an arrowhead on them. Basically they're sharpened sticks. So sorry, excuse me. So I'm not going to make this super ridiculously sharp, mind you, and because this is going to be in my class, but this is about the straightest piece of wood I could get. And I'm just probably looking at it now, I'm probably going to trim it down a little bit more, because I probably only realistically need about that much of it, because it's only meant to be a mock arrow. I'm not ever going to shoot it. It's just going to be sitting in my class. Like I said, a bit of a nod to the story. So this is what I'm going to start with. So the first thing I'm going to do is peel off all the bark, and give it a good old rub down, and probably a clean as well. Just wash it under some water, and then I'm going to start shaping the head of the arrow, and I'll come back to you. So the next step now is I've got these feathers and I'm going to turn them into fletchers. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a split and then peel them apart and trim them into the kind of the right shape that I want. And I'm doing this now while I wait for my stick to dry, because just as a pro tip, when you're doing stuff like that, especially carving any wood, and I like to whittle, it's one of my hobbies, whittling wet wood is really, really hard. So always when you're going to whittle anything, let it sit out and dry for at least a couple of hours, because that's such a small stick, it shouldn't take that long. So I'm going to turn this to time lapse, stick around, and hopefully at the end we'll have some fletchers. So you can see here that I'm sharpening the tips, and I also hammer them down because I don't want them to be too sharp. I just want it to have the effect that looks like it's sharp. I also went ahead and started super gluing on the fletchers after this, because I just wanted them to be held in place so I could tie them on and make it look a little bit more like the item from the story, but also just in case, so they would have a better chance of not falling off. Okay, so this is basically the final product. I don't want to do too much more than this, only because in the story, if you see, obviously in the video you can see me using all kinds of tools and equipment and blah 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 and super glue and stuff. He doesn't have any of that in the story. He basically just has a hatchet, and that's it. And he doesn't get anything else until he gets to the winter story, and then he finds like a survival kit. And I won't spoil the story for you. But basically, this is as much as I'm going to do to it now, and the reason is if I do too much to it and make it too, I don't know, too legit looking, I suppose you'd say, too realistic, not realistic, that's a bad word for it, too manufactured, it kind of takes away from the quality of it being like made by a child only using like primitive technology, because it's essentially just meant to be a prop. So I have a lot of confidence in the fact that this wouldn't actually work as real arrow. One, because it's way too fat, and two, because I know that I knocked the arrow and misaligned the fletchers on the arrow. But and in principle, if I threw it, it'd work. But it's shooting it out of a bow, no way. It's just meant to be a prop. So that's my spirit arrow from the Hatchet. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to subscribe to the channel in general, hit subscribe. I'm always doing fun teachery stuff for my students on this channel. A lot of the stuff is lessons based for them, but if you're into that sort of stuff, yeah, definitely subscribe and have a look through the catalogue of videos that I have on the channel. But for now, ka kite, and I'll see you next time on Mr. Ashley's Place.